What if I told you that the person who performed the world's first successful open-heart surgery was black? Or that a former slave became one of the wealthiest self-made millionaires in America? The history books sitting in our classrooms have left out some of the most incredible stories of black achievement, resistance, and brilliance. Today we're uncovering 10 hidden chapters of black history that will completely change how you see the past. But before we dig deeper, please like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Let's dive in. Number 10. The night Tulsa's Black Wall Street burned. Imagine a thriving black neighborhood so prosperous that it was called Black Wall Street. In 1921, the Greenwood district in Tulsa, Oklahoma was exactly that. Black-owned businesses lined the streets. Luxury hotels, movie theaters, law firms, hospitals, and grocery stores. Residents drove expensive cars and lived in beautiful homes. This wasn't supposed to be possible in Jim Crow America, but Greenwood proved otherwise. Then came May 31, 1921. A black teenager named Dick Rowland allegedly stumbled into a white elevator operator named Sarah Page. What happened next remains disputed, but what's undeniable is the horror that followed. A white mob descended on Greenwood with a fury that would last 18 hours. They didn't just attack people, they systematically destroyed an entire community. Eyewitness accounts describe airplanes dropping firebombs on black homes and businesses. Yes, you heard that right. American citizens used aircraft to bomb other American citizens on American soil. By the time the smoke cleared, over 35 square blocks were decimated. Conservative estimates put the death toll at 300, though the real number may never be known. Thousands were left homeless. Mass graves were dug. Insurance companies refused to pay claims to black survivors. For decades, this massacre was erased from textbooks, whispered about in hushed tones, deliberately forgotten by those who wanted to bury the truth. It took nearly a century before Tulsa began seriously investigating and acknowledging what happened. Black Wall Street wasn't just destroyed, it was nearly erased from memory itself. Number 9. The woman who refused before Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks is rightfully celebrated for refusing to give up her bus seat in 1955, but 15-year-old Claudette Cole then did it first 9 months earlier on that same Montgomery bus system. On March 2, 1955, Cole then was riding home from school when the driver demanded she move to the back. She refused, citing her constitutional rights. Police dragged her off the bus, kicking and screaming. She was arrested and jailed. So why don't we know her name? Civil rights leaders, including Rosa Parks herself, made a calculated decision. Cole then was young, unmarried, and would soon become pregnant. In the conservative 1950s South, movement leaders worried she wouldn't be the respectable face they needed to challenge segregation laws. They needed someone who could withstand the brutal character assassination that would inevitably come. Rosa Parks, an adult woman with an impeccable reputation and experience as an NAACP secretary, fit that strategic profile perfectly. This doesn't diminish Parks' courage, but it reveals an uncomfortable truth. Even movements for justice sometimes sacrifice individuals for strategy. Cole then later became one of 4 plaintiffs in Browder v. Gale, the case that actually ended bus segregation in Montgomery. Yet her name remains largely unknown. She lived most of her life in relative obscurity, working as a nurse's aide in New York. History chose its hero, and Claudette Cole then paid the price of being ahead of her time. Number 8. The black soldiers who liberated Dachau. When you picture soldiers liberating Nazi concentration camps at the end of World War II, what do you see? Most history books show white American GIs opening the gates. But the 761st Tank Battalion, a segregated all-black unit, was among the first American forces to reach and liberate several Nazi camps, including Dachau. These men fought in a segregated army for a country that treated them as second-class citizens. They couldn't drink from the same water fountains as white soldiers, yet they were expected to die on the same battlefields. The 761st, nicknamed the Black Panthers decades before the political party took that name, fought for 183 consecutive days in combat. They participated in the Battle of the Bulge, helped liberate French towns, and pushed deep into Germany. General George Patton, despite his well-documented racism, personally requested the 761st and told them, "I don't care what color you are as long as you go up there and kill those Kraut sons of bitches." When these black soldiers liberated Dachau and other camps, they witnessed the ultimate conclusion of racist ideology. The irony wasn't lost on them. They were liberating victims of one racist regime while serving in the military of another that denied them basic rights. Many of these veterans returned home to the same discrimination they'd left behind. Some were still wearing their uniforms when they were beaten or lynched in the South. It took until 1978 for the 761st to receive a Presidential Unit Citation for their extraordinary heroism. Their story reminds us that Black Americans have always fought for freedom, even when that freedom was denied to them at home. Number 7. The forgotten female inventor who changed surgery forever. Dr. Patricia Bath graduated from medical school in 1968 and became the first African American to complete a residency in ophthalmology. But her greatest achievement came in 1986 when she invented the Laserfico probe, a device that revolutionized cataract surgery and restored sight to millions worldwide. Before Bath's invention, cataract surgery was invasive, imprecise, and often unsuccessful. Her laser device could painlessly and accurately remove cataracts in minutes. She became the first African American woman doctor to receive a patent for a medical invention. She continued improving her design and received patents internationally. But Bath's impact went beyond invention. Working in Harlem, she noticed that blindness rates among Black patients were double that of white patients. She concluded that lack of access to eye care was the primary cause. This led her to co-found the American Institute for the Prevention of Blindness, based on the principle that eyesight is a basic human right. Bath traveled to Europe, Asia, and Africa performing surgeries and training doctors. She refused to profit excessively from her invention, prioritizing sight restoration over wealth accumulation. When she died in 2019, her obituaries finally gave her recognition, but during her lifetime, how many of us heard her name? How many young Black girls might have pursued ophthalmology or medical research if they'd known about Dr. Patricia Bath? Number 6. The slave who became California's first Black millionaire. In 1848, James P. Beckwourth, a Black mountain man, discovered a pass through the Sierra Nevada mountains that became crucial to Western expansion. But California's first Black millionaire was Biddy Mason, a woman who arrived in California as a slave. Mason was born into slavery around 1818. Her enslaver, Robert Smith, took her to California in 1851, even though California had entered the Union as a free state. 4 years, Mason worked without pay, walking behind his wagons for nearly 2,000 miles. When Smith decided to move to Texas, a slave state, Mason enlisted the help of free Black men in Los Angeles who petitioned the court for her freedom. In 1856, Judge Benjamin Hayes ruled in her favor. At age 38, Biddy Mason was finally free. She worked as a nurse and midwife, saving every penny. She invested in real estate when Los Angeles was still a dusty pueblo. Her financial wisdom was remarkable. She bought properties that would become some of the most valuable land in downtown Los Angeles. But Mason's wealth wasn't just for personal gain. She used her resources to establish the first African Methodist Episcopal Church in Los Angeles, the city's oldest Black church. She paid the taxes for struggling families to prevent them from losing their homes. During floods and economic depressions, she opened her home and purse to those in need, regardless of race. When she died in 1891, she was worth an estimated $300,000, equivalent to millions today. Biddy Mason proved that freedom plus determination could overcome even the most oppressive beginnings. Number 5. The town run entirely by Black women. In 1888, in Jim Crow, Mississippi, a remarkable community emerged. Mound Bayou, founded by former slaves Isaiah Montgomery and Benjamin Green. But what made this town truly extraordinary was what happened in the early 20th century when its businesses, institutions, and civic life became increasingly managed by Black women. While men held formal political positions, Black women in Mound Bayou ran the banks, managed the hospitals, operated schools, and controlled significant commercial enterprises. The Mound Bayou Hospital and Sanitarium, founded in 1942, employed Black female administrators and nurses in leadership positions unheard of in the segregated South. Black women owned and operated beauty parlors, restaurants, and retail stores. These women created a parallel economy in society where Black femininity wasn't devalued and Black female labor wasn't exploited. They proved that given autonomy and resources, Black women could build and sustain entire institutions. Mound Bayou became a beacon, a place where Black people, and particularly Black women, could live free from white supremacist violence and control. The town faced economic challenges over the decades, particularly after desegregation ironically reduced the need for separate Black institutions. But for several generations, Mound Bayou stood as proof that Black self-determination wasn't just possible, it was prosperous. The stories of these women entrepreneurs, educators, and leaders deserve their own chapters in history books, yet they remain footnotes if they're mentioned at all. Number 4. the coded quilts of the Underground Railroad. For generations, historians debated whether enslaved people used quilts to send coded messages to freedom seekers on the Underground Railroad. Recent scholarship has brought renewed attention to this possibility. According to oral traditions passed down through black families, specific quilt patterns hung on fences or clotheslines conveyed information about escape routes, safe houses, and warnings. The monkey wrench pattern supposedly signaled it was time to gather tools needed for the journey. The wagon wheel indicated it was time to pack and prepare for escape. Tumbling blocks warned travelers about rough terrain ahead. The bear's paw directed people to follow animal trails through mountains. Whether this was a widespread system or localized practice remains scholarly debate, but the ingenuity of the concept reflects a deeper truth about enslaved people. They were constantly creating coded communication systems right under their enslavers' noses. Spirituals like "Follow the Drinking Gourd" contain directions using the Big Dipper constellation. "Wade in the Water" instructed escapees to travel through streams to throw off tracking dogs. Enslaved people were brilliant strategists, constantly resisting, constantly planning, constantly communicating in languages their oppressors couldn't understand. The quilt theory reminds us that history isn't just written in official documents. It's stitched into fabric, sung in melodies, and whispered through generations. The lack of written evidence doesn't mean these systems didn't exist. It means enslaved people were smart enough not to leave evidence that could get them killed. The absence of proof in white archives doesn't equal the absence of truth in black memory. Number 3. The doctor who performed the first open-heart surgery. In 1893, Dr. Daniel Hale Williams performed the first successful open-heart surgery in history. A man named James Cornish arrived at Providence Hospital in Chicago with a stab wound near his heart. Without antibiotics, without blood transfusions, without any of the technology we associate with modern cardiac surgery, Williams opened Cornish's chest and successfully repaired the wound to the pericardium, the sac surrounding the heart. Cornish lived for 20 more years. Williams wasn't just a surgical pioneer. He was a civil rights advocate through medicine. In 1891, he founded Providence Hospital, the first interracial hospital in the United States and the first training school for black nurses. At a time when black doctors were barred from most hospitals and black patients received inferior care or were turned away entirely, Williams created an institution dedicated to excellent medical care regardless of race. He later became the chief surgeon at Freedman's Hospital in Washington, D.C., where he reorganized the facility and established a training program for black medical students and interns. He performed another cardiac surgery there in 1897, further cementing his reputation. Williams was also a founding member of the National Medical Association, created because the American Medical Association excluded black physicians. Despite these monumental achievements, Williams remains largely unknown outside medical history circles. His pioneering surgery, performed just 28 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, should be taught alongside other medical breakthroughs. Instead, when we learn about the history of cardiac surgery, Williams' name is often omitted entirely. The first heart surgery was performed by a black man, and that's not a footnote, that's a headline. Number 2. The night hundreds of enslaved people sailed to freedom. On November 7, 1841, 135 enslaved people seized control of the slave ship Creole while sailing from Virginia to New Orleans. Led by Madison Washington, an enslaved man who had previously escaped to Canada before returning to rescue his wife, the freedom seekers overpowered the crew, killed one slave trader who resisted, and forced the ship to sail to Nassau in the British Bahamas, where slavery had been abolished. When the Creole arrived in Nassau, British authorities freed all but 19 people who were charged with mutiny. The American government demanded their return, sparking an international incident. Southern slaveholders were outraged. The British refused. This wasn't a small escape. This was 128 people simultaneously liberating themselves through strategic planning and collective courage. Madison Washington became an instant legend in abolitionist circles. Frederick Douglass wrote about him. The Creole Rebellion proved what slaveholders feared most. Enslaved people weren't docile. They were strategically waiting for opportunities to seize their freedom. The rebellion also exposed the fragility of slavery. It only took a few hours of coordinated resistance to break the chains of over 100 people. Yet the Creole Rebellion is barely mentioned in American history classes, overshadowed by the better-known Amistad case. Why? Perhaps because Washington's story is too radical, too celebratory of black agency and violence against white supremacy. The Creole rebels weren't passively rescued. They actively freed themselves and successfully escaped to permanent freedom. That narrative doesn't fit comfortable stories about slavery's end, so it's been conveniently forgotten. Number 1. The 6-year-old who integrated schools before Brown versus Board. In 1847, a 5-year-old black girl named Sarah Roberts tried to attend a whites-only school in Boston. Her father, Benjamin Roberts, sued the city when she was repeatedly rejected. The case, Roberts versus City of Boston, went to the Massachusetts Supreme Court in 1849. They lost. The court ruled that separate but equal facilities were constitutional, establishing the legal precedent that would uphold segregation for over a century. Sarah Roberts' story is crucial because it came first. When the Supreme Court ruled in Plessy versus Ferguson in 1896 that segregation was legal, they were building on legal reasoning first articulated in Sarah Roberts' case 47 years earlier. This little girl's fight for education became the foundation for Jim Crow's legal architecture, though not by her choice or her father's. They fought against it. But here's what most people don't know. The Roberts family didn't stop fighting. Boston's black community organized. They boycotted segregated schools. They petitioned the legislature. And in 1855, just 6 years after their court loss, the Massachusetts legislature banned segregation in public schools. Sarah Roberts' case, though a legal defeat, sparked a movement that achieved what the courts wouldn't grant. When we teach Brown versus Board of Education in 1954 as the beginning of school desegregation, we erase a century of black families fighting the same fight. Sarah Roberts walked to that white school in 1847, a full 107 years before Ruby Bridges would do the same amid screaming mobs. The fight for educational equality didn't begin in the 1950s. It began the moment slavery ended and continued through every generation since. Sarah Roberts deserves her place in that story, right at the beginning, not forgotten in the footnotes. These 10 stories represent just the surface of hidden black history. For every story we've uncovered today, hundreds more remain buried in archives, family oral histories, and forgotten newspapers. The question isn't whether black people achieved remarkable things throughout history. They undeniably did. The question is why these stories were systematically excluded from our textbooks, our documentaries, and our collective memory. What does it say about our education system that brilliance, courage, and innovation are only deemed worth teaching when they come from certain communities? What genius are we missing today because young black students never see themselves reflected in history's greatest achievements? The truth is, these aren't hidden stories. They're suppressed stories. The information has always existed. The decision to exclude them from mainstream curricula was deliberate. But knowledge, like freedom, can't be contained forever. Every time we share these stories, we reclaim a piece of stolen history. Every time we say these names, we resist erasure. Black history isn't a month. It's the foundation of American history, and it's time we taught it that way. If this story moved you, inspired you, or taught you something new, please like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment in the comment section. Hit the notification bell so you never miss when we uncover the next hidden chapter of history. Because these stories matter. They deserve to be heard. And together, we're making sure they're never forgotten. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep uncovering the truth.